Hello, class. In this video, I'm going to show how to do brick or stone and sort of collage them in from photographs. Again, it could be a good technique for editing and whatnot. And the reality is it's done exactly as the same way as the last video I just made on the siding that we see here, but I thought showing again as a second time with a slightly different material might not hurt. And so I've already gone ahead and downloaded a brick. It should work for stone again. You just want to make sure it's a seamless or texture pattern so the left and the right and top and bottom can be put together in a pattern. And I chose this. I know I want my stone to be like a darkish gray color, but again in Photoshop it's really easy to change those things. So I'm going to actually start there in this case. I'm going to go image, adjust, hue, saturation, and I'll just take the saturation all the way down to a full gray. And you might play with the lightness, but actually as I'm sort of thinking about it, I think I'll actually say okay. And the bricks are a bit light in color, so I'll do that. I'm going to do that through adjustments level. And when I know I'm going to have to take the darks down, that's just going to change the darks. But also I want to take the mid-tones and I want to make those brighter. I don't want to change the whites. I want the whites to be pretty white, so I'm going to leave that alone and just sort of adjust these two toggles to make sort of dark gray brick. And we'll go with that. Again, I can always adjust it and again later on, but we'll give that a go. I'm gonna do Control A for select all, Control C for copy, come over to my drawing. I'm gonna move to the top layer. These are all material layers that I made to do the rest of the material, some of which I just painted on, and I'll paste those in. If you need to scale it, go ahead and scale it. In fact, in this case, I feel like my brick is probably a little large. So I'm going to do Control T for scale and actually scale them down. Um, if I go too small, I'm going to lose the detail, but really it's all about texture. So we'll say that looks pretty good. And I'll move them out of the way from my drawing. And I'm going to move over my icon. And I'm going to press Control on my keyboard and hit the layer icon just to select that area and go Edit, Define Pattern. Um, Why is my pattern not defining? All right, yeah, there you go. Edit define pattern. I think what I had, I didn't have quite the right selection set as a perfect rectangle there, but I got it worked out. Okay, say okay. I can delete that. I no longer need that anymore, and I'm just going to make a new marquee again, bigger than the area I'm working with. So I'm going to work on this face of the brick here. So make a bigger rectangle. Edit fill, make sure it says pattern, select the pattern you just made, say okay just like that, and then edit, transform, perspective, and get it into perspective. And the nice thing about this is the top line, this line, and this line should be equal. So that's one check mark. I'm going to get close and then just sort of move it up. And then the bottom line should in theory be approximately the same. Actually, this horizon line, it should be horizontal at that line as well. So that means this bottom area has to come down. When I do that, it shrinks this down. So now I'm going to pull this back up and it's going to change this. So it's sort of going back and forth and back and forth. With bricks, I've got a lot of clues to sort of help me out. It's like adjust the center, adjust the top, adjust the center, adjust the top. And then when you get it pretty close, double click to hit enter. And if you remember what we did last time, I'm just going to eyeball that off temporarily, do Control D to deselect, then go to my magic wand to select the area that I want. I can't forget the shadows here. So this is the area I want to be brick. I want to delete the rest, so I'm going to have to invert the selection. Select inverse. Don't see much happen on screen, but we just selected the opposite. Turn back on that brick layer and hit delete. And there we go. I got brick in that perspective. Essentially, I'm going to do the same for this face, except for the perspective is going to go the other way. And I'm going to do the same for this face in this face as well. So I'll do one more face and probably pause the video and just pop in when it's finished here, just so one more time at this. Why don't I do this face over here just so it's clearly visible? It'll be just like this face, just a little more clean. So I'm going to draw marquee around an area. You can either do it on the same layer or make a new layer. I think I'll make a new layer just to keep it easy. Edit, fill, pattern, edit, transform, perspective. Again, if my perspective were working, it'd be a little easier. I can use the top guide as a line to see the angle that it should be, and I can use my horizon line to make sure the bricks are perfectly horizontal in that area, and I'll make that horizontal. My top line is actually pretty good with just those two moves, so I'll set it, do Control D to deselect, turn that layer off, magic wand that surface, select inverse, turn the layer back on, and delete. And there we go, I've got that surface of brick. So I'm just gonna, just for the sake of time, I'm gonna do the same thing for these two faces. I'll pause the video and come back when those are placed in. There we go, and while the other bricks are on now, I know this isn't quite collage, but I mean the perspective and the texture looks decent for how we're doing this. I would say like the two surfaces looking exactly the same colors. They're a bit sort of dramatic, so I'm going to change actually the one surface to be slightly darker than the other, just to sort of give it a sense of three-dimensionality. So I'm going to go to my move tool to select my layers, because these are all my brick layers here, and I could do a better job labeling them, perhaps putting them in groups, but that's all right. If I go to my move tool and I right click, I can see the different layers that are there. That my buildings, that's the layer I started with, so this must be layer 13. And I'm just going to go to image, adjust. I don't want to go to curves. I could do curves, but I don't like working with curves. Personally, I like working with levels. So we'll go here and we'll just sort of set this whole thing slightly darker. Actually pull in uh, both sides a little bit in the gray tone, just to give it sort of that sense like, oh, this is turning a corner a little bit, right? Just like that. And I'll do the same for this surface here. So right click, layer 14, image, adjust, levels. Just play with this to sort of get what I think looks pretty good, just for the sense of the eye and how it's looking. So something like that, say okay, it gives a little bit more three-dimensionality. You know, feel free to make any of those basic changes to any layers that you're doing. It's a lot like adjusting the color. In fact, it just happens to be the color just wanted to be darker, so that was a good way of doing it. So there we go. That's brick, that's siding. I just paint bucketed in and painted on the rest of these materials as needed. If you did want texture, I could have gotten a concrete texture and pasted it for the concrete areas. I just thought it was so small, wasn't necessarily needed, but go ahead, if it might enhance your work for a better grade if you want to go and do things like the concrete and the wood beams and so on and so forth. But what I'll show in the next video is the one last step that I need to do here for the building itself, which is the glass.